Chapter 5, Fire Department Resources. So in this chapter, we're going to examine different types of fire department equipment and facilities. Our objectives for this chapter: describe the various types of fire department facilities. Identify and describe the use of pumping apparatus. Explains the functions and operations of various aerial apparatus. Explain how specialized fire apparatus are utilized. Describe the different levels of protection for the work uniform: proximity, structural, wildland, and level A, B, C, and D ensembles. Explain why SCBA and pass devices are important to firefighter safety. A wide range of resources needed to equip the fire department. NFPA does establish manufacturing standards for all fire service apparatus, and that is according to NFPA 1901. Printed or digital copies of NFPA 1001 standard can be obtained from NFPA, which is the standard for firefighting. So, when we look at some fire department facilities, there are several ones that are kind of interesting because they're not related to fire suppression activities. And these are your administration buildings, such as a headquarters office. Oftentimes, that's where you have your fire chief, your fire marshal, and possibly training division, things of that nature. And they handle the day-to-day operations to ensure that the fire department has the tools, needs, and necessary equipment to do their job. Though some fire departments, their headquarters is also linked with a fire station. So I've seen them where you've had like headquarters on the first floor, fire department, living space and whatnot on the second floor, or across the bay, or things of that nature. So there's no hard and fast rules. It just depends on the jurisdiction and what things they have going on there. Another place could be your telecommunications center, basically your dispatch, your 911 center where the emergency calls come in. That can be a part of your administration building. That can be its own separate building, or it can be, again, lumped in with a fire station. It all depends on your jurisdiction. Another type of building we talked a little bit about is the training facilities. And each state has their own requirements for their training facilities. Also, training towers and burn buildings for Class A fires are often recommended and hopefully required. But here in Georgia, again, the state doesn't mandate the training facilities. So a lot of departments end up maybe sharing the cost or going down to the State Fire Academy to be able to access such things as a training tower and a burn building. Other things that are helpful at a training facility is obviously adequate water supply. And of course, NFPA 1402 is the standard for a burn building. Here is a lovely picture of a fire training facility. And as you can see here, we have a drill tower where you have the staircase, going all the way to the top. This one looks to be probably about 5-6 stories. I would say that, judging by the smokestacks here, that this could be your burn building. Of course, we have a fire truck here, either A, using it, or one that's assigned to that facility. And I'm sure somewhere in here they've got a good water source, whether it be a static or more than likely a couple of good hydrants. The next building that you're probably most familiar with is actual fire stations. And of course, they must meet the same safety standards as administration buildings and training facilities. However, there are other things that they must include. And good thing we must understand is that, yes, these individuals there oftentimes are there for 24 hours a day, every third day, 365 days a year. Though in some departments that are busier, you may have 12 or 13-hour rotating shifts. So basically, you have people living here. So obviously, when they're living here, you have to have sleeping accommodations, bathrooms, showers, facilities, living areas, kitchens, and a day room. They need to have offices and other areas. Oftentimes they'll have a workout room, possibly meeting rooms, and things of that nature. And of course a bay to park your fire equipment and keep it out of the weather. Great thing about the fire apparatus bays now with requirements, you're looking at a typical 3-bay station design now, which is kind of the norm when you look at the NFPA standard that recommends what needs to be built. Oftentimes they are drive-through bays, meaning you pull around behind the station and you drive through. That way you don't have to back in, where a lot of accidents do happen in backing in vehicles. With bays, a good thing to note is a lot of times they're used for other things, such as public gathering, maybe training, maybe even meeting facilities. So it's kind of an all-purpose room. And then, of course, you have equipment storage, gear, fire gear, and things of that nature. One thing I do want to point out with the newer fire stations now, they are required that they have individual sleeping quarters. However, if you have an older fire station you get assigned to, a lot of times you're sequestered, or I should say you sleep in a bunk room where you have about 6, 7, or even 8 beds. So you may hear some snoring going on at night, and my advice is have something that produces that what they call white noise, like a fan or something of that nature. And as I said, here's a good picture of a newer style fire station where you've got your single bed, a couple of lockers, maybe a TV if you're lucky, possibly a desk. So you have a little bit of privacy. So now that we've talked about fire stations, let's talk about what goes in there. And there are all different kinds of fire apparatus. So the first couple ones we're going to look at here are your pumping apparatus, and that means that you have a fire truck that has a water tank on it and the ability to pump the water to said fire hoses. You have such thing as a Type 1 pumper, Type 2 initial attack pumper, and a Type 3 wildland firefighting apparatus. And all these different types basically refer to how much water they carry, how many gallons per minute they can pump. Like your traditional Type 1 pumper carries at minimum, I want to say 750 gallons and pumps at 1,500 gallons per minute at max capacity. Here's another example, and this particular piece of equipment is an elevated water tower, which enables the pumping apparatus to operate in both offensive and defensive modes. So basically, the water comes out of here, and it could be punched into a multi-story building, or in this case, probably into the aircraft, because this is also looking like an airport. So this is also for airport firefighting. There are 5 different classifications for brush trucks, and again that goes to how much water they can carry, and there's specialty equipment on there, things of that nature, but it's types 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. One key feature of a wildland firefighting apparatus, and think about it, this is a piece of equipment that is designed to go off-road and fight wildland fires. So a good feature for these vehicles to have is a pump and roll operations, meaning as it drives, it can also pump water. In your traditional fire truck, however, they do not pump and roll, oftentimes because the transmission that turns the wheels also is used to turn the gears and assembly in the fire pump to generate pressure to get the water out of the tank. So it's kind of either or and not both. Another feature they can have is a compressed air foam system, or CAFS, and that's just a way to help soak down the ground and extinguish stumps and things of that nature. It's what we call firefighting foam. So imagine, if you will, a sink filled with Dawn dish soap and how it bubbles up. That's a good example of what firefighting foam looks like. And of course, it lowers the solubility so the water can soak in to the ground. And of course, NFPA 1906 is the standard for that. Again, here's a great picture of a wildland apparatus. Definitely a four-wheel drive capacity here. And here in the back, right here, is your actual fire pump. And this black box here is your water tank. And probably up here is some gear, storage, things of that nature, maybe a nozzle or something to spray. Here's a close-up view, and with the new standard for wildland firefighting gear, it requires individuals to be in a roll cage for safety, have a safety harness, and basically it really keeps them tethered to the unit so they don't fall out and accidentally get ran over. So a firefighter could be transported here, or they could sit here or stand here, shall we say, and operate a hose line or something of that nature. Another piece of equipment is a mobile water supply apparatus. And this particular piece of equipment is different from your fire pumps or fire trucks. This sucker, its main feature is the fact that it carries large amounts of water, and traditionally 1,000 gallons. They may or may not have a pump on them to help facilitate the transfer of the water from the tanker, or the mobile water supply, or tender as a lot of people call them, to the fire trucks. NFPA 1903 is a standard for mobile water supply apparatus. And again, these can be gravity fed or may have a little pump. Their main feature is not to put fires out, but to transport water to the fire engines. And you'll see these particular pieces of equipment in your rural setting areas where you don't have a lot of hydrants actively in place in the community. A lot of times individuals in rural communities kind of make up their own water tenders, and that can kind of be dangerous, because if you look at it, this is 1,000 gallons of water, and water is heavy, and you start making turns, it's going to slosh the water around and change the center of gravity, and quite possible, if you go fast enough, can cause it to roll. So one thing that they do to prevent the shifting of the water is to have baffles. And what I mean by baffles is, and there's probably one right here, it's basically a wall, if you will, from one side to the other that keeps the water separated. And within that baffle, you'll have openings that kind of allow the water to go back and forth. But basically, it minimizes the waves that are created by the movement of the tender. Another big category of equipment is your aerial apparatuses. And they have the minimum capability of being 50 feet long in terms of a ladder. A lot of times they're 95 to 100. Their main focus is not really fighting fire, but quite possibly rescue, or using their ladder as an elevated master stream to kind of drown the fire. And a lot of times they have a large master stream nozzle at the end. They are hydraulically powered operated and have electrical and manual backups. And it carries a large complement of tools with your ladder trucks, where your fire trucks have water, your aerial trucks carry tools. And usually it's a full complement of ladders from something as small as your 8, 10, 12 foot attic ladders to 24, 35, even possibly 65-foot regular ladders. Your aerial apparatus falls into 4 categories. You have an aerial ladder with a platform, a telescoping aerial platform, and an articulating aerial platform. And we'll look at pictures of these so you can kind of tell the difference. NFPA 1904 is the standard for aerial ladders and elevated platforms. Okay, here's a single frame ladder truck, and the aerial ladder may be midship or rear mounted, meaning that the mount is right here. As I said earlier, here's that elevated master stream, and notice that this does not have a platform, so this is not one of those platform trucks. It's got a single ladder, again probably 85 feet just by the look of it. Here's one with a platform, and notice that's basically the one with a bucket on the front that firefighters, that's a bad looking stick guy, isn't it? Boy, that's just terrible. Can basically ride up and down or climb up. They can do rescues, and also a lot of times they have a mass stream on there so the firefighter can sit in the bucket or stand in the bucket and direct a stream to be over the fire. Here's one of those big time aerial platforms that have the articulating arm. What we mean here is there's several different joints. You can kind of see them here that allows that bucket to get really tall in a hurry. And these are great to work around high rises and things of that nature. And they can reach up to about 33 stories high, as seen here. Another piece of common equipment is an ambulance. You have a type 1, 2, and type 3. Again, we'll look at some pictures, but a type 1 is a truck chassis, which is got a box or that patient compartment mounted on the back. A type 2 is a van front that again has the box mounted on the back. And your type 3 is a modular unit on a van chassis. Oh, I'm sorry. Your type 3 is the one with the van front and the box on the back. Your type 2 is strictly looks like a van. And they can be basic life support or advanced life support. And KKK A-1822 is the federal specification for ambulances. However, there's a newer standard out that was written by NFPA about 2 or 3 years ago that this book doesn't list, that recommends a lot more safety equipment than this old outdated standard here that's referenced. Okay, here's that one with the truck front as seen here, and the box back or the patient compartment. A lot of times you'll see a little window right here so they can communicate between the people in the back and the driver. Here's your total van type. Again, driver's up here, and this whole area is your patient compartment. Again, a lot of times you will have an opening. And here is that van front with that box back. This is a pretty common ambulance seen on the roads, though a lot of the newer ones you see now are the van type, all single body. A lot of people are using the one made by Mercedes now. The next type of specialty apparatus is your rescue apparatus, and they can be light, medium, or heavy duty. And what I mean by rescue or heavy duty rescue are pieces of equipment that are designed not for really firefighting per se, but to get people out of certain jams, whether it be car wrecks or maybe high rises or trapped in a ditch or what we call confined space. So instead of, say, fire hoses, they carry ropes and carabiners, pulleys, things of that nature, extrication equipment. And their whole focus is probably search and rescue, again, depending on the department. Another type of specialty apparatus can be your hazmat trucks. And again, they are often maybe a truck or a trailer. They carry different types of specialty equipment that is not so much used for firefighting, but to mitigate hazardous materials such as chemical leaks, gas leaks, things of that nature. So it's not really firefighter or firefighting oriented. It's something that's more chemical, biological, or nuclear. As you see, there are a lot of other avenues other than just firefighting to be familiar with or certified in. So again, what strikes your fancy in the fire service, and what direction do you want to go in? There's something for everyone. Okay, let's going to take a step back. Another special equipment is your airport firefighting apparatus. And their main concentration is, of course, firefighting foam, 1,000 gallons, and they have the ability to actually fight fire from the officer's seat or in the front, where you have like some sort of articulating arm like we saw in the other picture, or maybe what we call a deck gun mounted on the top. And that way you have some added protection from the heat, because remember, jet fuel is highly volatile, very flammable, and produces large amounts of heat. Here's a picture of a hazmat trailer. And moving on, let's say you are in a jurisdiction that has a bay or a harbor. And, you know, a lot of times those boats do catch fire. So you may have fire boats out there. And these are high volume diesel pumps capable of pumping over 20,000 gallons per minute. They have mass string turret nozzles capable of 3,000 gallons. And of course, NFPA 1925 is the standard on it. Here's a great picture of one here. You may have some aircraft that is used in fighting fire. Of course, a lot of times these are your wildland firefighting scenes, such as your helicopters that carry the twin Bambi buckets or Bambi buckets, and basically they fly over a lake, they drop a bucket in it, you know, there's a big cable, and then they fly back to where the fire is, they hit a button, and the bottom drops out of the bucket, releasing the water. Fixed wing, such as something that kind of looks like a C-130 that drops a water fire retardant mixture, again to help put the fires out. And then these are your wildland settings. Here's a great picture of a fixed wing, probably a training mission. Notice the small fire there, and they're trying to dive bomb it, so to speak. So let's kind of dive in now to some of your personal protective equipment. And the first thing you need to look at is your station work uniform. Basically, what do you wear to work on a daily basis? And these things can be maybe some sort of fire retardant material like Nomex or 100% cotton, but these are your basic station uniforms. Here's a great example of one. Next thing that, of course, your firefighter is going to need is your structural firefighting ensemble, which has coats, trousers, helmets, gloves, specialty footwear, and hoods, and must protect the wearer for 35 seconds from second-degree burns, and I forget what the exact temperature rating is. And NFPA 1971 has all the facts and figures on what the turnout gear should do. When we're looking at our turnout gear, you're going to have an outer shell, which is kind of like that brown or yellow canvas type material. Then you're going to have a space or a vapor barrier, and then you're going to have a thermal barrier, which is oftentimes the inner shell or something that's really heavy and kind of like a cotton material. Kind of looks like a vest. There's your outer shell. Notice the reflective striping on it. And there's that inner shell / vapor barrier right there, because that's going to be the inside. That's going to go against the firefighter. You know, right here's where the skin is. And this is going to be between the firefighter and that outer canvas shell. And there's that inside thermal layer that goes against the firefighter. And of course, here is the final look with the ensemble. This individual is also wearing an air pack and a mask, but is not actively breathing air. And it's important to note that this equipment will not protect somebody from gas or toxins or liquids. Its sole purpose is to protect against fire and heat. Now, another type of ensemble that you may see, we talked a little bit of wildland firefighting, but these people have their own gear. And let's think about it. These guys are out in the forest, possibly having to walk several miles, limited transportation. So their gear is kind of like a lightweight jacket, trousers, helmet, gloves, high-top boots, and web gear, including a fire shelter. And here's a good look at it. So notice how it's not as bulky, it's lightweight. Again, these guys need to be able to move, and of course, the way they are going to put wildland fires out a lot of times is, cutting down trees, making fire breaks, possibly using those wildland firefighting trucks that have limited water supply. So heat is not so much a concern. I mean, it is, because you're going to be near it, but it's not going to be as hot as, say, a structure fire. So that's why their stuff is a little bit lighter. Again, we talked about airport firefighters, so they have their own specialty equipment, and this is kind of looking like a space suit. And actually, this is actually NASA's, where they got a lot of good information in designing these proximity suits. And again, here's a good example. And their sole design is to protect the wearer from heat. A lot of times with your flammable liquid or alcohol type fires, this looks to be an alcohol type fire. And the only reason I say that is they're using firefighting foam as well as a special additive called purple K, noticing the purple smoke. And that's solely designed to be used on ethanol or alcohol-based fires. It allows the foam not to be broken down so quickly. Don't worry, that's not on the test. So, moving over to hazardous material, they have your A, B, and C level ensembles, and we'll look at them. A is basically the highest level of protection. It's fully encapsulated the wearer, and basically I like to say it kind of looks like a body bag with a window in it. You have your own air, and it's basically airtight. So it protects you from that liquid and gas. So it's basically a plastic bag. Here's an excellent example of your level A suit. See, I wasn't lying. There's the window. And I said, no disrespect, but it does kind of look like a body bag. And notice there's a zipper that runs along here, and then there's a plastic Velcro that seals it to help keep it airtight on the inside and, of course, the outside. Again, notice the footwear. We're not really worried about structural firefighting or steel-toe boots. We're worried about splashing through liquid, so that's how you kind of have that plastic booty-looking stuff. A lot of times they'll either A, be in socks and wear over boots over that, or they'll wear their station boots and slide it in. Level B ensemble is similar to level A, but it doesn't have that vapor protection. It's only for like splash stuff. And again, here is your level B ensemble. You still wear an SCBA, but when you exhale, of course, the air is forced out of here, out of the side. So it provides limited respiratory, not as great as level A. Again, this is more for splash protection than as opposed to gas. And then we move on to level C, which is basically configured as a coverall or a two-piece suit. It's solely worn to protect against splashes and where respiratory hazards are minimal. They can wear an SCBA with them. A lot of times it's some sort of filtered mask, as you see here. This is actually just a cartridge that goes on there to filter out the particles, and he's not really wearing a air tank. And that's really the biggest difference in the different levels of the PPE for hazardous material. It's self-contained, it's an SCBA, and then kind of a filtered level. So it goes down from highest protection to just minimalist. So your A, B, and C ensembles are worn during possible terrorist incident because they're designed for chemical and biological events. And believe it or not, your regular station uniform is a level of personal protective equipment, and that is a level D ensemble, and provides no chemical protection whatsoever. So let's talk a little bit about those self-contained breathing apparatuses. You have an open circuit or a closed circuit. The open circuit is 30 or 60-minute supply cylinder, and a closed circuit is basically something that's attached to an external air source, usually like several big tanks or a big air compressor, and it allows you to work in the area for an extended period of time. Reason they call it an open circuit is because you have that air tank on your back, and of course when you breathe in, the negative pressure lets the air come out of the tank and kind of seals to the face, and then when you exhale, that built-in pressure is kind of forced out the sides of the cheeks. Now as the air is forced out, it prevents anything from coming in because of the positive pressure. So with carrying our own air, that allows us to work in IDLH environments, which is immediate dangers to life and health. It's one of the most important pieces of equipment that a firefighter has, whether it's a structure fire or a hazardous material incident. And here's some examples of your IDLH environment. Places where oxygen is less than 19.5%. Normally, oxygen that's around you in the room right now is at 21% and some change, depending on what book you want to read. So below 19.5 is considered oxygen deprived. That could be in like a hole or possibly some sort of gas leak or things of that nature is a good example where you may see those low oxygen concentration levels. Temperatures above 130, you breathe in super hot heated gas at 130 degrees, you're going to burn your lungs, and you're going to have a bad day. And then, of course, smoke and toxins. There are three standards, NFPA 1500 and 1404. are a couple that talk about SCBAs as well as NFPA 1981. Again, it would behoove you just to look over these numbers and know what they relate to in terms of test questions. Another very important piece of equipment, and a lot of times these things are incorporated in the SCBAs now because that's what the standard recommends, but if not, you should have your own PASS or personal alert safety system. And basically it's designed to make a loud audible alarm and have some sort of flashing light if a firefighter remains motionless for 30 seconds. And that's to help other firefighters know that, hey, you're in trouble, you're not moving for whatever reason, something's happened, and it's a way for your fellow firefighters, men and women, to find you and get you out of the structure into safety. Because again, remember, you're operating in probably low visibility environments to zero visibility, so it makes it a little hard to see folks. Not only does it automatically go off, but it should have a button where you can activate it manually. So, hey, I'm lost, I don't know where everybody else is, I'm a little freaked out, need some help, and you pop a squat, hit the button, and wait for the cavalry to arrive. And here's some just general tools that you may see firefighters carry, such as a flathead axe, a pickhead axe, a Halligan tool. We talked a little bit earlier about the extrication gear, so the hydraulic spreaders, cutters, and rams. You may have a pike pole, a circular saw, waddling gear, things of that nature. And here's just some different equipment: chainsaw, pike pole there, etc. Fire rake. Now this is something that's really great, a TIC, or thermal imaging camera. These are pretty much standard equipment now on all fire trucks, and a lot of times you have one, if not two, per unit, and they are used to locate victims under poor visibility. Basically, it measures the heat. You look through the camera and you'll see some sort of red or yellow or green if it's cold image. Maybe you see an image of a person, so it's great for finding victims. Or let's say you can't find the fire. You would think that, oh, hey, a fire is bright red and you should be able to see it. Well, that's not always the case. Sometimes, as you'll see in the next chapter with fire behavior, their black smoke, that byproduct, will bank down all the way to the floor after all the oxygen is consumed, and you still have that fire, that heat there smoldering, and it makes it hard to find the fire. So with that camera, you can find the base or the seat of the fire and extinguish it, and then of course ventilate the structure. Here is a picture of a very old thermal imaging camera. They've actually gotten a lot more smaller and lightweight. This is kind of more of the boat anchor style. If you're lucky, a lot of your fire trucks now have basically computers in them. A lot of times tablets and or literally computers. But other things can be such things as a mobile data terminal that gives you dispatch, updates, GPS, mapping, things of that nature. So, a lot of things we talked about in this chapter. So, regardless of the size of your fire department, you need to have access to several basic resources to protect the community. Stations, training, and emergency response, along with the vehicles, tools, and equipment, are part of those resources. Fire departments need to plan and be ready for those instances that are likely to occur in their community. So let's say if you have just one reservoir or one big lake, do you really think you need a fireboat that pumps, 2,000 gallons a minute? Probably not. But not saying that you may not need something smaller, but again, look at your community. What do you need? So, as we covered, there is a whole gambit. Firefighters, I believe, are a jack of all trades and a master, a king of none. As we see there, they cover everything from EMS calls to hazardous material to wildland firefighting to specialty rescue. So after you get your general firefighting certification, there's avenues for everyone to go to specialize in something. Now, maybe you just want to do firefighting. That's great. Well, there are other stations that, also focus on certain specialty things, like, as we said, hazardous material or quite possible rescue and extrication. So, if you guys have any questions, feel free to email me or call me. My email is aroberts@athenstech.edu or call me at 706-357-0162. And of course, you can look at the calendar and Blackboard for my virtual office hours if you want to just hit me up for some questions or comments or some statements, and we can discuss it virtually. But look at the calendar for the dates and times. Well, until next time, thank you very much, and you guys have a wonderful day.